network security, malware, computer viruses, phishing, hacking, identity theft. These are just a handful of things that should be of great concern to any business, but especially to a financial institution. Is your bank or credit union protected against cyber attacks? I'm your host, Honey Shelton, and this is Training Matters.
Training Matters is brought to you by the Training Institute, dedicated to setting the standard for individuals responsible for training effectiveness in banks and credit unions across the country.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this month's episode of Training Matters. I'm excited that we're going to talk about things that matter a lot to you and to me, and certainly to every bank and credit union. And that has to do with the cyber world and all the concerns and threats that are out there, ways that you can protect yourself. I'm excited that I have Chad Knutson from SBS CyberSecurity with me today. Chad, welcome. Tell us about what SBS CyberSecurity is all about and your role at the company.
Yes, welcome and good morning. Well, SBS is an organization that looks to protect financial institutions from cybersecurity threats. And we do this in a lot of different ways for organizations. But what we try really hard to do is help banks and credit unions be able to make good decisions. Like, what do I do next as a financial institution? Where would I spend my next dollar or my next hour of time preparing for cybersecurity threats? So equipping you to be a good decision maker as an organization. Obviously, everything you decide to do, we put into policies and procedures for everybody in our organization to follow kind of over and over again. It's like our playbook if you were coaching a basketball team, right? We document our playbook and then we all practice it and run it, so when it's game time, we're ready. And then we help audit organizations to ensure that those policies and procedures are being followed and implemented, that they're adequate enough to fight cybersecurity threats. Some of the unique things that we have as part of this process of helping people be decision makers and building policies and procedures, we have a team of cybersecurity experts, some hackers as well in that team, network security guys that they're ethical, good hackers who try to break into organizations to expose weaknesses so we can fix them before they become a problem with a real hacker. And a lot of that process, we'll touch on today through social engineering. How is the sci-fi TV hacking, is that real or is it really simple and it's focused on people and phishing emails and such? So that's kind of what our organization does is build organizations' abilities to protect themselves from these type of issues. I've been involved with SBS since we started back in 2004. I'm now a partner of SBS, and I've done everything that we do as an organization, but I focus my time today on education. So we do a lot of webinars and banking conferences to help share what we know and spread good practices that we've helped people develop.
Well, your company, no doubt, is in high demand with all the concern about cybersecurity and some of the specific things you mentioned. I'd like for you to talk about important reminders regarding information security for everyone that works in a financial institution, Chad.
That's a great question. It's an important one in cybersecurity because we think of it as highly technical, and there's a lot of that's happening, but what we all need to remember is that it's really about people. It's about you and I and every other employee at the organization. We make the difference with cybersecurity. And the thing we may not always understand is that we as people are the targets. It's not your technology and your firewall and your workstation. I mean, those are things affected along the way, but in reality, the people are what criminals are after. You and I are all valuable targets to them. We have valuable capabilities. We have valuable information. So we have to understand we're target. And once we understand that they're after us, that can help us make maybe better decisions when we're working. Just think of how many emails you get in your inbox. Some of us, hundreds of them come in every day. And you have to decide, is this email legitimate or is it a scam? Is it a virus? Is it something infectious that's going to hurt my institution? And hundreds of times a day, we have to make that decision. Is it legitimate or not? And our decisions matter so much. It doesn't matter if you're the president or if you're a loan officer or a teller, an intern. If you make the wrong decision, it has an impact on your organization. That simple email matters a lot. Now, everybody in our organization needs different types of training. I mean, if I do wire transfers, there's some scams that focus on me. If I'm an executive, I make decisions and set policies, so I need maybe some different type training. So we want to make sure everybody in the organization gets what's appropriate, but we also have to understand that we are targets, that the hackers are after us as people. A couple of statistics that are floating around out there, if you're interested in this stuff, Verizon has a great data breach report they put out every year. And this last one suggests that 30% of people will click on something in their email. So it's a phishing scam. It's a trick to infect you. And 30% of us are inclined to click on it. So if you've got an organization of 100 people, there's 30 opportunities. And, you can do the math for your size. We see a lot of these breaches happening. And when we analyze all these big breaches, it comes back to 91% of the time, some level of phishing, either at the beginning or in the middle of that leads to this breach being successful. I mean, just kind of to summarize all those points up, it's about the people.
Wow, that really does put it in perspective, Chad. That's some thought-provoking statistics and concerns, that's for sure. Here we are less than 3 months into 2017. I know you're not a fortune teller, but what are some predictions that come to mind for you when you think about the cybersecurity world in the future?
Well, we generally talk about 3 issues that are emerging that will be some of our biggest challenges, and maybe from the perspective of biggest losses, but also just from we weren't prepared for this challenge scenario. The first one, its name is business email compromise. It kind of sounds technical, but it's simply a phishing email. And maybe you're the controller or you do wires or you move money and you get this email and it comes from an executive generally within your organization, someone you know. Oftentimes they even know that they normally do this, so they're familiar with your process. And you get this email that says, hey, I need a wire to go out today for $50,000. And by the way, I'm on a cruise ship, had wireless internet for 2 minutes, wanted to send this off, but it's got to be done today. Here's the details for the wire. And a lot of organizations, not just financial institutions, but even sometimes our customers fall for this. And they authorize this wire buying into the story. I don't need to call this person and verify this. This has to be done today. I don't want something bad to happen. So it's a very low technology attack that's happening that has caused significant losses so far, and it's accelerating at a rate because of its simplicity. And it's something we have to be aware of. We can't approve transactions without some sort of verbal cue from the person who created it or someone else at their level who is familiar with the situation. The second item that comes to mind, a lot of us may have heard about ransomware. And something else that's been growing at an exponential rate in 2016 into 2017. This is something that is changing, though. The ransomware people are getting smarter. We're starting to block more file attachments. We're starting to limit more internet sites and stuff that we go to. So to get you infected, that's what ransomware is, right? You get an infection on your computer. It encrypts your files. And then a message pops up saying, hey, Chad, I'm sorry, but all your files are encrypted, and for $1,000, I'll give them back to you. And then it tries to infect files on your network in your institution. But they're finding creative ways to get through. So what we're seeing a new trend in is HR, where they're applying for a job you have posted. We mimicked this the other day in the testing that we do. There was a posting for an IT specialist. made the most perfect resume. We put a lot of time into it. You would have hired this guy. He was perfect. And we sent it in. He applied for the job. We got the resume forwarded on to the network administrator, the information security guy. And he opened this perfect resume, and we infected his computer and took it over. And that's challenging because that's something we expect to happen in our institutions, for people to apply for jobs and email us resumes. So they're getting very creative, and the amount that they're asking for is going up in cost. We're seeing $10,000 to $20,000 now for ransom. So that's something in 2017 that I wish I could say has gone away, but it's going to be one of our biggest problems that we face. The last one is kind of a new idea, not in the sense of hackers have done it for a while, but it's new to you and I. It's the Internet of Things. You've at home most likely bought a new TV. It's one of those smart ones, and you can watch Amazon right off the TV. It's wireless. That's great convenience, but how have we secured it? Your car is now satellite connected. If someone steals it, you just OnStar button the guy and he shuts the car off going down the road. That's super convenient, but what if that was used for malicious purposes? So we have all these things we've connected to the internet. And in 2017, I think we're going to have a moment of awakening where we realize, that Amazon Echo on my counter at home is probably risky. It's not just a convenience. It could hurt us. And as businesses, we are putting these technologies in places too. So think of in your bank or credit union where you've maybe put a new smart TV or a new IP-based video camera. Hackers are attacking those things and using them against us. There's a university the other day that their internet went down because their vending machines, which are all connected to the network now, were hacked into, and they took down the internet because they're creating so much malicious traffic out of this university. So those would be three things I think in 2017 we're going to struggle with and really need to pay attention to.
Well, that makes me want to unplug all my smart TVs, Chad. I mean, that's definitely an aspect of cyber threat I hadn't thought of. One thing I'm curious about, because you and I are in the same business in terms of education, and so something I hear about and am certainly not qualified to help with, but you are some tips that you'd recommend that companies wanting to build a real culture of cybersecurity need to focus on. What could you tell us about that?
Well, for sure, anything we do to build culture in general applies conceptually. So I'll focus on some of the things maybe a little more unique. We come into a financial institution and talk to them, and we're trying to gauge where they're at. There's two things that I kind of look at to see how mature cybersecurity is. If you take a look at the board and the executive level involvement, I might ask, how many times does your information security officer get to meet with the board on cybersecurity? They got to meet once a year, so that's a pretty common answer. But if they're saying quarterly or monthly, then I might ask, well, how much time do you spend with the board each month? If they get a couple minutes, that's good. If they get 10 to 15 minutes, that's great, because it's an opportunity to communicate information to the executive level of the organization as to what's happening in cybersecurity. So the more often and the more information or the more time you spend with the executive group is a good indicator that the maturity of culture is good. The other thing we look at is ask what projects your institution has done. So maybe you rolled out a mobile capture solution. Wonderful invention. I love it. And we'll ask then, well, what kind of cybersecurity or information security issues did you run into? If there isn't a list of things that come out naturally, it's probably because it wasn't really considered yet. I mean, we got the product in place. We're just starting to use it with our customers or our members. We haven't really spent time on that yet, and we're not there yet. But it's something that's instrumental in the creation of a product or service. It should be up front, no different than blueprints before you build a branch. It has to be forethought. It has to be integrated as you go. So two great things to look for in determining culture. If they have a good culture that embraces it, that means they're taking time to understand it. So that's one thing I encourage organizations to do is everybody needs to be aware of cybersecurity. It's not an IT guy. It's not an executive. It's every employee. As we talked about, we all have an important role there, but that means we have to know about these things. You have to know that the Amazon Echo has been subpoenaed in a murder investigation because it's collecting voice recordings so that it can answer your questions. What a brilliant observation from law enforcement. So those are useful things to us to start to understand these issues so we can make more informed decisions. Otherwise, we're just going to essentially guess. This email doesn't look bad. I think it's okay, and I open it. So we have to be more informed. Organizations are doing more phishing on a monthly basis or some sort of reoccurring schedule, and they measure it. And they can say, my organization is at a 5% of people click rate. And I think those are powerful metrics because it helps us all work towards a goal. We're like, well, 5's not acceptable. We want a 3% or less click rate in our organization. It gives us something to work towards as a group. I think that's a very powerful thing. But I would share fraud stories on a weekly basis, have a newsletter or something that goes out to employees, give them best practices that they can take home to work on with their computers and making themselves safer there, because if they're safer at home, they're going to be safer at work. Security is not always convenient. So the other thing I can encourage us all to do is think about you drive your car to work every day, and you got to buckle up, and you got to obey the speed limit, and you got to signal when you change lanes, and all these safety things we do are kind of an inconvenience. It'd be a heck of a lot easier if I just do what I wanted and go where I please. So as security increases in our organizations, passwords will get longer. Things may have extra steps in them. If we know why we're doing these extra things, we can embrace that and understand, it is a little bit more work, but boy, it's really important that we protect our organization and do the right thing to protect our information. So look to embrace and understand those controls so that we have a positive application of them, and ask questions. If you want to know about something, go seek out the answer and help grow yourself. But those would be my suggestions to build a better culture, which historically cybersecurity hasn't had a very good one in our institutions, and it's something that to put a lot of effort in.
Boy, that's interesting. What great advice to get the whole workforce behind securing the network and critical information. Chad, something that pops up frequently when I'm in working with a bank or a credit union is they tell me what a tough time they have building and even maintaining the expertise needed to stay on top of these issues we're talking about around cybersecurity, information security. What solutions or advice can you share about how they can stay up to date and develop that expertise, have confidence that the people who need to know what's going on and how to do these things, be on top, current, these things you've been talking about?
I wish I had a more positive outlook. I don't mean to be a negative attitude here, but the problem is going to get worse for a while, because we're seeing such a severe workforce shortage. There's a lot of different reports. Everybody's, rubbing their crystal ball differently, but we're looking at about 1.5 million jobs in 2019, so, less than 2 years away. So 1.5 million jobs unfilled globally in the cybersecurity space. So, in the United States, that might be a couple 100,000 positions that are always open. So the problem might be is you get a good one in, and they're going to find a better opportunity, and good for them as an individual, and that's the struggle we have as businesses. So we need to be aware of that as we try to figure out mechanisms to retain that talent when you do find it. So keeping that in mind, the other thing I think is helpful is making sure we have good policies and procedures. Having a good documented playbook for our organization to run will make it easier when a new person comes in to handle our information technology issues. It gives them that set of documentation to help them be successful. So if you got a good one now, work really hard to create good policies and procedures so that you have that lasting effect of it in your organization. If you're in the process of growing talent, there's obviously a lot of training courses that you can send folks to. We've designed a series of certification programs meant for financial institutions. And we just did that out of the need for, there's a lot of great certification programs out there in cybersecurity. I have my CISP and my CISA, and I really encourage those. Those are wonderful programs, but it's sometimes hard to apply them in a small and medium-sized institution. So we've built a set of those as well. to focus on core issues to raise talent in an organization. So any type of certification program is a great way to invest quickly in them to boost their skills. Longer term investments, there's definitely some good university programs. We're very grateful here in Madison, South Dakota, where our main office is, to have a university that focuses on cybersecurity. We have an NSA designated center of excellence, so they can get a master's in information assurance. So it's a good resource as well. It's a little longer term investment, but those would be two good options for you that way. We help a lot of people through consulting. And you think of consultants, maybe somebody who puts together a report for you and hands it over, but our model is more towards building the people up. We want to invest in your employees, give them talents, transfer our knowledge to them, and sometimes it leads to us working ourselves out of a job, but it's all for the right purpose. And generally, there's always something new to work on, so we can just apply it at the next level and take it up a notch in those organizations. The last idea I would have is, if you do have an IT person that you're looking to grow into cybersecurity, have them find a mentor, whether it's someone else in the community that's really good at it or has a lot of experience. If you can find a consultant that will mentor them, but find something one-on-one so they can develop those self-learning skills and become a better professional. But it is going to be one of our bigger challenges. We don't know what we don't know, and we can't protect our institutions against things we don't understand and aren't ready for.
Well, Chad, this has been so enlightening and informative. I've enjoyed having you as a guest. I hope I can have you back on the show in the future. If our listeners want to learn more about SBS CyberSecurity, tell them how they could get in touch with your team.
Well, our website is a very useful tool that you can use. It's got some free resources. It's got some webinars and other things. So sbscyber.com, and you're welcome to kind of look around on there. If you have a question you want to email me, it's simply chad@sbscyber.com. Some of the things we have out there, we have a newsletter. We do some free webinars every month. We call it the Hacker Hour. Nick Podorowski moderates that for us, and he's it's very unstructured. He kind of goes back and forth with his attendee. He'll have a guest speaker that's maybe one of our ethical hackers, and they'll tell stories about how they've compromised institutions and ways we can learn from that. So that's something we do for free just to make awareness around cybersecurity issues. So that's all on our website. So please come check us out there for a little bit more information on cybersecurity.
That's great, Chad. I sure want to thank you for joining us for this episode of Training Matters. Everyone, I will look forward to being with all of you again next month. Be sure to go to Chad's website. Keep the learning going. Thanks for tuning in this month.
You've been listening to Training Matters with Honey Shelton.